with a Buddhist couple who meditated for an hour in the morning, an hour in the night, every day for years, and they go to six. And I run into center managers that they met next year, and so just verbally, I learned a lot. They taught me all summer, and now I'm doing.
Nice. So do you have a meditation practice that you do, or?
Personally, yeah. Like at home? Yes. I try for 5 minutes in the morning,
That's great.
That's my goal, and that's what I try for.
And Marilyn?
I started meditating about 4 or 5 years ago. Always been sort of, the Buddhist path has been in me, but I didn't really recognize it. And I've done most of level 2 in Shambhala, and I have a private teacher in Arizona who works with me, Vajrayana practice, and we do both wind and search the mantras, and it's just so long.
Yes.
So I'm getting it.
Well, thank you. Just so you know who I am, my name is Karen Hussak, and I'm actually a school teacher. I teach kindergarten and grade 1. And you know that poster where it says all you ever need to know in life you learned in kindergarten? It's true. It's absolutely true. All the things that I teach here at 3 Jewels, I teach in my classroom in different worlds. And I've been studying since 2000 within the lineage that 3 Jewels exists in, which is through Geshe Michael Roach and Lama Christy McNally and Lama Moot. Those are my main teachers. And this particular set of what we're going to do is really evolves and develops over 5 weeks. This meditation night, it can be a drop-in sort of thing. You can come and go, but I'm going to teach from what a set of teachings called Mahamudra, and Mahamudra is the emptiness of your own mind. And there's a lot of lingo and jargon in Buddhism, and so that's partly what I wanted to know what people know, because my goal for myself is to learn how to teach without using the jargon, and sort of get to a place where you can sit down in a coffee shop and have a conversation with anyone, expressing these ideas without using Buddhist terms. That's sort of my goal for myself, is to, because for many, many, many years, about 5 to 6, maybe 7 years, I taught formally every week, and it was very, very formal, very, I teach, you listen. And I'm really interested in moving myself and my teaching and what I'm doing into a less formal way of approaching things. And I'm interested in moving into conversation. I'm interested in moving into exploring and writing in a journal and contemplating our thoughts and sharing them, and it being more intimate. That's what I'm interested in. Because, quite frankly, I take what I teach here and I move it into my life. And so this is also for me. It's for me to learn how to teach in a way that I can move that into my life and have conversations without having to stop and think, how do I say that? How do I move into that? I think it grounds us a lot more. And I'm still learning. After all of these years of meditating, I am still learning. And I will tell you that my own path with meditation has been a challenging one. I find meditation very hard. I think a lot of people do. So that's partly why I also wanted to know what their practice was and what they did, because tonight might be a little bit more laden with me talking, because I want to be able to give all of you some tools that you can walk away with from tonight and go home and sit down and actually use the meditations that we'll do tonight at home during the day, or not only as a meditation, but as a level of as ideas that your awareness is on as you're moving throughout your day. I'm really interested in sort of that level of exchange. So that's sort of my goal for myself, is to be able to do that for you and with you. So how does that sound?
This is awesome.
Perfect.
In this particular lineage, in this particular tradition, there are lots of things that if you're that come with homeworks and quizzes and all of these things. And this is a meditation practice, not a formal study practice, but it happens to be one of the few meditation practices that came with homeworks and quizzes and all of those things, which I've taught in that way in the past. And we're not even remotely going to go there, because you actually don't really need to do it that way. So I call this the Flavours of Perception, because in this teaching comes from Lord Buddha, and it's based upon his 3 turnings of the wheel, when he taught to different practitioners, different students, different people that would come to hear him, about how we understand our world, how our perceptions frame how we understand our world, and how that shapes how we walk in it, how we engage with others, how we move inside of it, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others. And so there are 6, what my teacher has labeled as flavors of perception. The last one is considered within this lineage to be the right one, the true one, the real one. But I will tell you that it's sort of like music. For me, these ideas are like musical scales, that in any given day we might find our mind perceiving things in certain ways. And in one situation we might move into it in one way, in another situation we might move it into it in a different way. So my goal is for, over the next 5 weeks, to teach 1 a night. And maybe one week I will compress 2 in. And I haven't decided yet, partly because I wanted to come and see who was here and to see how that went. And so it's going to be very casual and simple, but my goal is that it does progress and build, and you can take it and frame it and shape it for yourself. So this big teaching, if you walk out there into the world and someone says, so what are you doing on Wednesday nights? You can say to them, I'm learning about Maha Mudra. So, and Maha means big and Mudra means seal. And it's called the Great Big Seal because ultimately what we will begin to try to do over the next few weeks is to learn how to use our mind, our mind as our object for meditation, as opposed to a thing. What we're going to start with tonight, though, are things. And we're going to get sort of the way in. We're going to get the grounding, the landing, and then we're going to move towards using our mind as our object in meditation. For one really good reason, your mind is always with you. You don't have to sit there and go, oh, where's that object that I'm going to meditate on? It's right there. And ultimately, if you're interested in changing your life and how you engage with yourself and others, the place where you need to change it is inside of your own mind. And then in Buddhism, they say that there's 2 wings, the wing of compassion and the wing of wisdom. And together, they sort of form a unit, a whole unit of understanding. This particular type of meditation would fall under the wisdom side of meditations. Compassion would be, heart opening, having empathy for others, moving into that idea. This particular set of meditations is about wisdom and really understanding the nature of our perceptions, how they frame our ideas and our feelings, and that where do they come from, and why do we hold them onto them. So that sounds very vague and very ethereal, and it should be. It's very grounded. So we all walked in here. Here, I'm going to give you a few things. We're going to start kind of like play, because, I'd like to say that's what I did all day with the kids, but every once in a while, in the course of my day, we play. And I might bore you with stories of them once in a while, so I'm going to tell you a story about them right now. Yesterday we started to study solids, liquids, and gases, water is a solid, ice, water is a liquid, and water is a gas, steam. And so then the first thing I defined for them is matter. And matter takes 3 forms, and all things are matter. And so we talk about this a little bit. Walk around the room and find something that's matter. And they all come back with something, a block, a cube, crayon, teddy bear. And I said, walk around the room and find something that's not matter. And they're walking around and they're kind of looking at things. Is this not matter? And one kid sat at the back of the room and he was like, space. Space is not matter. And I went, you are thinking. You have some sense of something. In the Buddhist tradition, they say I'm going to start defining some terms. That emptiness, many times if you read books, you might read books and not quite understand what that term means. What's that?
Rock.
It's a rock, right? It's hard, it's a rock. It's a rock. It exists, it's there, it's a rock. And this?
Pen.
It's a pen.
Sorry.
You know?
I think it's Jeopardy.
It clicks, it writes, it's a pen. These might seem like trivial questions. In Buddhism, they say that everything is empty of having any own self-nature, coming from its own side. So what we're going to learn about in Mahamudra is understanding how we put ideas onto the pen to create a sense that this pen exists separate and apart from me. This rock exists separate and apart from me. So the reason why my 6-year-old friend was so brilliant is because according to in Buddhism, according to the Buddha, the only thing that truly is empty is space. There's no, you can't define it, you can't hold on to it. It's not a thing that you can put something into. The only thing that is empty is space. Everything else is some form of relationship between me and the object I'm seeing. Does that make sense? And how I'm engaging with it, how I'm perceiving it. So when we talk about emptiness, we're not saying that nothing's there, and they're not saying that it doesn't exist. They're not saying it doesn't work. We're talking about the relationship between my perceptions of it and how I'm assuming it exists. Yes, with me? Okay. So that's one definition. And these are emptiness teachings. Everything that I'm going to teach until probably the very last week is not emptiness. It's ways into understanding our minds more deeply so that we can eventually down the road, if you sit and take these meditations and practice them, you might have some intellectual understanding of it in a certain way. Anybody who you might consider to be an enlightened being being Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, your next door neighbor you think, sees the world in the most amazing of ways and has everything amazing happen to them. An enlightened being would still see this as a pen. That's called a correct perception. And in Sanskrit, to throw out fancy words, pramana. It's a pen. I'm seeing it correctly. It's not that it's not a pen, but the opinion, the ideas that I have about how that pen exists are what we're going to meditate on. Okay? So, as we go on, I'll throw out some more definitions at you, but I think everyone in general these days, you go into a coffee shop and you see something and they call it the karma cup. And it's for tips, and everyone thinks that they have some understanding of karma. And karma and emptiness in Buddhism are inseparable. we're not going to spend an awful lot of time talking about karma, but it's important to not just gloss over that idea. A working definition of karma is anything you do, anything you say, anything you think that imprints itself upon you. And that idea is not a radical idea. It exists in our society. When Jesus said, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Meaning, don't do or say or anything that you don't want someone else to do or say or think towards you. The difference between what Jesus said and Buddhism is that they are connecting it to infinite past lives and infinite future lives. So my teachers call it gardening, that you do good things because what is arising for you in this moment can't change, but what could arise in the next moment has the possibility of changing, depending on how well you have controlled what you have said, what you have thought, and what you have done. It's something you can take home and think about if you really believe in it or not. It's a whole other course. It's a whole lot of other things that we're not really going to spend our time talking about a whole lot. But to do justice to everybody, I need to make sure we have some sense of common ground, because that's the ground. That's part of the ground that we will walk on. So, any questions so far? Everybody with me?
Are you going to do the pen thing?
Can
you?
Can I? Do you want me to do the
special
pen thing?
request? Yeah.
We'll do the pen thing together.
Okay.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons why we study emptiness, and this is not just an emptiness meditation. Mahamudra is, because emptiness means sort of how I'm perceiving this object. The ultimate definition of Mahamudra is the emptiness of my own mind. So there are lots of different, in Buddhism they would call emptiness meditations on how something exists. And that's mostly where we're going to be sitting. Mahamudra is the emptiness of our own mind. And the reason we might want to understand our own mind really well comes down to something very simple in terms of Buddhism, which is one of the things that the Buddha taught is the Four Noble Truths, or called the Four Arya Truths. Because when you understand these things really and truly, it's one of the ways you get to become an enlightened being, whatever that might mean for you. And the first Arya Truth is that all of life is suffering. And I will say that when I first heard that for the first time, and when I learned that, I went home and I left where I'd taken this class and I kind of stomped all the way home. That idea just pissed me off. And I really didn't want it to be true. I didn't like that idea. And I had to really sit and think about it for a long time. Do I really believe all of life is suffering? It seems, so depressing. It seems so fatalistic. It seems just not a nice way of walking through your day. All of life is suffering. My teacher says that, my pen runs out and I get mildly irritated. You might say, well, that's not really suffering, that's mild irritation. But anything that turns your mind so that it has an affliction of any kind is some form of suffering. I eat chocolate, which I love, and it's gone, or I ate too much. I'm like, oh. That feeling after you've had a really big meal and then you really wish you hadn't, or you want to unzip your pants or, go change, because all of a sudden what was really good and you couldn't stop has now hit the point where it's really uncomfortable. And I don't feel so good, and the entire family's passed out on every sofa or parts of the floor they can find after a big family dinner because everyone ate too much, and now it's not pleasant anymore, it's unpleasant. So that would be an example, according to my teacher, of a good thing becoming a suffering thing, a not good thing. Huge suffering? Maybe not, no. But in that way. Again, that's yet another idea you can take home and go and think about. And if you want to, you can come back to 3 Jewels and have other people go into those ideas in greater depth for you. But that is one way that you can think about the first noble truth. All of life is suffering. The second noble truth is that there are reasons for that suffering. We get ill. We age. Actually, even birth is considered to be a form of suffering. We're born, we get sick, we age, and then we die. Those are the 4 great sufferings. So, there are reasons for our suffering. And then there is a possibility the third noble truth is that there's a possibility to end that suffering. We can end it. And the last one is that there is a path to end that suffering. And that, in Buddhism, would be the Buddhist path. I, quite frankly, as do many of my teachers, which is why they make good teachers for me, think that it doesn't really matter what path you're on. If you are working towards ending, making you a happier person, and by default the others around you a happier people, because you're a happier person. I think if your path is the path of happiness, kudos to you. It doesn't need to be, I really, really, truly believe it doesn't need to be under the guise of a religion or any specific lineage. I think that any religion that you, or spiritual path that you practice, and it's yours and it works for you because it makes you a happier person and a better person, and then you can be a happier and better person for the others around you, is an authentic path that you should follow. So there is a path. There is a way to end suffering. I think sometimes we're interested in these ideas. My own personal philosophy is that we are spiritual beings. You look at the caveman paintings in France. 4,000 years ago, people were trying to record things to understand their life in some sort of way. Pyramids, putting things inside of the pyramids so that there was a way going into the afterlife. I think we as human beings have sought to understand who we are and our role in our world from the beginning. I don't think that our quest is a unique one. I think that we can placate ourselves with chocolate or televisions or trips, all sorts of things. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. But in the end, is me having another piece of chocolate going to make me a happier person, a better person for others? Temporarily. Yeah. But not in a greater sense. So I think that when people come here to what is a Dharma Buddhist center, a yoga center, it's not of particular concern to me that you are here to enter into this lineage. If you have your own, it's your own. And we're happy to honor that and just happy to have you here. All right, let's start. So, I'm going to search for more rocks at the bottom of my bag because I think there's more down here. Yes, there is. Excellent. I brought some more pens. I must have been thinking what you would like. So, what I would like you to do is just take a look at the rocks. I brought different ones. Find the one that you think might be attractive to you. Pick it up, feel it, and if you don't like the way it feels, put it down and pick another one. So, just hold it, feel it, and we're going to have a pramana of it. Correct perception, right? What is it? It's a It's a rock. Now, just kind of hold on to that rock and ask yourself if it feels good. Do you like its texture? Do you like its shape? Do you like how it fits into your hand if you close it? Do you like its weight? And what...
I like my rock.
Yeah. They're good.
It's really
I like
good.
holding things. I like having something I can kind of put my hand around like that. I like that sensation of something nesting inside of me. So when you do that, now get in touch with the feeling you have about that rock. How does it feel? Apparently, you have 3 choices here. You can come up with other words, but really it's going to come down to 3. You feel good? You feel bad? Or you kind of feel neutral about it, like, So, how do you feel about your rock?
I love my rock.
I guess mine's neutral because nothing really comes up. I like the color.
I feel really inspired by my rock. I really love the outdoors and love rocks in general, so I'm happy that you brought rocks.
I'm glad you're here then.
I feel neutral. It brings back lots of nice memories, though, from childhood. So, I don't know, maybe that's good.
But we get some sort of feeling, right? It's a rock. Correct perception. Could your rock be anything else?
Mm-hmm.
It could be a paperweight. I could say, it's my paperweight. But really, it's a rock being used as a paperweight, right? It's still a rock. Now, sometimes walking along, I might see it as something else. Maybe especially this one because it's sort of light colored, it has an interesting hump. If I saw that off in a distance, could I for a second think that maybe it was a mouse going along
Yes,
the floor?
maybe.
Maybe. Not in Vancouver, I wouldn't particularly have that thought, but I've lived in other countries of the world where that would definitely be a valid perception on my part. Oh, something crawling on my floor. Yeah, probably. So if this rock was over there in that dark corner in the shadows, I might think that for a minute until I walked over, and then I would change my incorrect perception to rock. I would change that, right? And I might think annoying rock because it made me think that I had a cockroach in my house, or I had a small rodent in my house. But I like these rocks. It feels pretty good in my hand. This one is particularly sweet. I want to try a new rock to see if you can change your feeling. Maybe you need a different rock to change that feeling, and put a different one in your hand, and all of a sudden you get a different sensation.
So it's smooth.
Yeah. So when you change, does the feeling change? This one doesn't fit my hand quite as much. I'm it's okay. I'm kind of neutral about this one because I don't really have a strong opinion about it, which is really why I'm neutral. If I had a really strong opinion, I might not like it. I might say, no, it's not a good rock at all. But,
We're not really looking at the rock, so we're looking at our feelings about the rock.
yeah,
This is okay.
yeah. But, so what have we noticed? We change the context of what we're looking at, and what happens to our feelings? They change. Okay? Seems like such a simple thing. We like, well, of course I know that. Happens all the time. But in Mahamudra, how we perceive our world is we could call that a worldview. We could say that's our worldview, how I perceive it. Have you ever met people where you're like, oh, cup half full kind of person, or cup half empty kind of person? How we see our world, sort of does it come from the rock, that feeling, or is it coming from us, that feeling?
Us.
Yeah. Yeah. So the very first flavor of Mahamudra, I just like to, is understanding that this rock is a changing and impermanent thing. Because one worldview that many of us have in different sort of ways is that everything out there in our world, the floor, this rock, my book, my mittens, are unchanging, permanent, fixed things. My mitten will always be a mitten. It will, whether it's in my view or not, it's a mitten. I put this rock down here and I walk into the bathroom. When I'm in the bathroom, do I assume that this rock is still here, functioning as a rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
So is that the first view? Is like everything's permanent and fixed?
The first mistaken view is that everything is a permanent, unchanging thing.
Like how I feel about one of my students.
Yeah. So how we see the physical world then becomes a manifestation into our feelings, into our emotional world, and into how we make decisions, how we interact. If I think that everything is, so let me backtrack for a second. So the first flavor of emptiness is understanding impermanence. Things are, everything is, nothing is permanent or unchanging. Nothing is permanent or unchanging. Everything is impermanent and changing, moment to moment. And that's the first worldview. The first flavor of emptiness is to understand things as unfixed, impermanent, and changing things. And we think, on an intellectual level, yeah, well, I know that. But where I want you to sit and we can just talk about this for a minute, think about something. So does everyone here own a computer?
Mm-hmm.
Think about your computer. Do you think your computer is going to be there tomorrow morning for you to turn it on? I hope so. But we do. I go to bed at night and I think my computer's going to be there in the morning. And it's going to turn on. It's going to work. I think it's this, even though I know in a certain way eventually technology breaks down. When the day that my computer doesn't turn on and I've lost all of my data, and I get a feeling, I get an emotion, are you going to sit, you're not going to sit there and be neutral about that feeling. What would a typical, appropriate feeling be? Pissed, damn. I'm annoyed, I'm irritated. Now I have to go and find that hard drive and hope, I think it was 2 years ago I backed it up the last time, and I'm going to have to go to a store, I'm going to have to buy a new laptop, I don't have money. And we become frustrated when things that we assumed some sense of duration of permanence with, either it was permanent for a day, or a month, or a year, or a lifetime. We put some expectation of permanence onto things, even if we intellectually understand that it's not a permanent thing. So, where's my pens? Here's my cheap, big pen, 10 in a package for $5.99 or something like that. I'm not terribly attached to this pen. I'm not really that attached to it. So would my feeling when this pen runs out be good, bad, or neutral?
Neutral.
Pretty neutral. I pretty much expect that, I can see the ink's running out. I expect that it's going to run out one day. But in that moment, when it does run out, and I need to write down that note because I'm on the phone with someone, I've got to get the phone number down, and that pen runs out and I can't find another one in any proximity to me, I'm going to have a feeling arise. And it's going to be not a huge feeling, but mild irritation. I'm mildly irritated right now in this moment. Not that I didn't think the pen would last forever, but that it ran out at an inconvenient time. If this were a Mont Blanc pen that my family gave to me upon graduation from my master's degree, and it's imbued with all of that, their sense of pride in my accomplishment, and it's a memory for all of those things, my feeling might be a little bit less than neutral. It might be a little bit more irritated. I'm having a mental affliction because something I thought was permanent in some way, whether I thought it would last for a short time, medium length of time, or a long time, didn't last. Does that make sense? You get that idea? Have you had those experiences? Has everyone had that experience of at least mild annoyance? Maybe you're better than I am. I get a little pissed off sometimes, when something breaks, something falls, something fails. And I wasn't expecting it particularly, so I'm not girding myself for that. So that's flavor number 1. What we're going to do is, so we've done this as a contemplation, and I'm going to walk you through it so you can write it down and do it at home and make sure you have the steps. Mode 1 is you just look at it. Just look at the object. Label it. Rock. And then step 2. Try to find that feeling you have about how long this object is going to last. A day, a week, a year, forever. Some sense of its permanence. And then try to see it as an impermanent thing. Try to catch its impermanence in your mind. And then get in touch with that feeling you have about it. Good, bad, neutral, or whatever other words that work for you. Some variation of those. And then the antidote to that is to tell yourself the world's always changing. It's always changing. So I won't get so upset because everything is always changing anyway. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about the sciences, but I do know that, in physics, for example, physicists say that this particular rock might have a few molecules of real matter and the rest of it is air and empty space. But somehow that translates into what feels like a very hard, fairly permanent thing. So I think that there are all sorts of ways into this idea, not just as a Buddhist idea, but even in science they talk about how things don't quite exist the way that we see them. So that's the first flavor, and what I thought we could do is we can do this as a contemplation. Contemplation basically means we sit around and think about it and talk about it. Or we can do it as a guided meditation where I sort of guide you. Which one would you like to do? Guided? Okay.
So you keep a rock?
You can keep your rock if you like. We're going to move from, and what we're going to use is, because everyone has a pen or a writing tool of some kind with them, right? So we're going to start with our pen. But we're not going to actually use it in front of us. And then we're going to go from the pen to, which is an object we're probably pretty neutral about, you know. We don't really expect these pens to last forever. We don't have that expectation. But do you have a favorite object? Something in your life that you're like, you know, I'm really kind of attached to that. You?
Is my dog an object?
Sure, absolutely. Everything in this world is an object, including your own mind, so yeah.
Consciousness?
Space.
Except space.
What about consciousness?
Consciousness is a state of being as opposed to an object. So I wouldn't, your mind and consciousness would be connected though, right? Do you have a favorite object?
Yeah. Yeah.
A person or a thing?
Hard, yeah.
Yeah? Do you?
Yeah, my dog. I got a printer all the way from Ontario on the plane, but I think the dog counts more.
I've taught this a few times, and for me, I have a doll that I've had since I was 3. Her name's Snuggles. And Snuggles has a mohawk, no hair. I have a photograph of me when I was 3 with Snuggles, with hair, which I don't have any recollection of whatsoever because my sister cut all her hair off. And, you know, Snuggles has a pen in her head because someone cut open her mouth and stuck a pen lid in. And my brother wrote his first word on her. It was an inappropriate word, and he spelt it incorrectly, but it was his first word. I-T-T. I think he was trying to spell tit, but it, you know, came out the wrong way. And everybody sees this doll. You know, I went to university. Snuggles went. I lived in Ecuador. So did she. I lived in the Dominican Republic. So did she. I lived in Vietnam. So did she. And I apologized to her when I put her at the top of the suitcase because it's kind of like she's a person, but I know in my brain that she's really not. And so I have to put her in the luggage to ship her around the world. But I apologize to her as I put her in last, and I try to make her, I zip it up, and I feel a little bad. She's just been with me for so long that, you know, she's imbued with a lot of things for me, a lot of very strong and powerful feelings. I might have said that she was the most important object in my life as a thing. But your question about the dog, it's a very good one, and I would say for me it would have been, it's my mother. And when I lost my mother, I learned just how strong that attachment was, as opposed to thinking of a thing, but something that I put all of my feeling onto. So whatever that is for you, whatever place that you're comfortable with, something that you know will elicit an emotion for you. So we're going to move from, let's start. So when we meditate, what you want to be really clear about is that you want to be straight. And you don't want to be scrunched over like this. And that's partly because in meditation, the goal of meditation is to breathe freely, to allow things to move through you freely. So when you're crunched over, there's not a lot going on. But here, there's more movement. And you want to be comfortable. And you want to sort of unclench your jaw. You want it to be relaxed. You want your body to be relaxed. You want your shoulders to be not tense, not up there. To be here. Getting a little straight. Put your hands wherever you like. Some people say, you know, they like their hands here. Some people like their hands here. You just put them where you want. And we're going to take 10 deep breaths. In through your nose and slowly out through your mouth. And really feel your belly expand. Your eyes are soft. Your mouth is soft. Your body is soft. And just feel the breath moving through you, moving easily in and out. Now just think about a pen. And you're having a correct perception of it. And you can label it pen. And think to yourself about how it's going to last for a little while. Now go back to just looking at the pen again. It's a long cylinder. It's got some parts to it, a top and a bottom. And just fill it in. Try to notice your feeling about it. Try to find that feeling where you think that pen's going to last for a little while. And then tell yourself that all things change. All the time, moment to moment. And does your feeling about the pen change with that idea? We're going to just take a pause and take another breath. And call to mind the object you feel your favorite physical object, your favorite object, that something you own that you like the most. Really fill out that mental image you have of that object. Its color, its size, its shape, its texture. What you do with it, how you use it. And now that you've got a clear picture of that object, stop and check in with your feelings. How do you feel about that object? Are you attracted to it? Do you love it? Does it make you feel good? What's going on for you? Try to get in touch with how you would feel if that object was broken or lost or gone. Now take a look at that object again. And try to see it as something that doesn't have the permanence you think it does. It's changing constantly. Now we're going to take a pause and just take another breath, and we're going to transition into a Mahamudra meditation. If you need to wiggle or shift yourself, now's the time. So find your spot again. Back straight, eyes, mouth, face relaxed. And just think about how your body feels, how you feel right now in this moment. Whatever word comes to you, look at that feeling. Is it happy? Mildly happy? Mildly sad? And try to catch that sense that that feeling is going to last for a little while. Now try to strip that feeling away. Try to strip away that sensation that the feeling is going to last. And see it as fleeting. And how does that feel to think of the feeling that way as fleeting? Does it feel better? And just take a few minutes and just notice sensations in your body, in your mind, what's going on. Notice them, label them, catch yourself thinking they're permanent. And we'll do that for just a few more minutes. Anytime you're ready, you can come back. So how did that feel? Between the three objects of the pen, something you felt attached to in your mind, were there differences in what you were experiencing or thinking about or feeling?
When I was trying to let that feeling go, my meditation just went. It went. Wow. My mind got busy.
Yeah, that happens.
It was all the mind though. You know, like what I felt about my favorite object, it was just me. It was just a feeling in me.
Did anyone find themselves thinking it's going to last and then having to let go of it? With your favorite thing or the feeling?
I had to got a bit teary inside myself.
Yeah, it can be quite emotional. You know, and I was thinking about this and I thought, well, at some level, we in our society, as thinking people, understand that cars break down. In a very consumer-oriented society, we're quite comfortable with the loss of things, stuff. You know, we might get mildly irritated. But I was thinking about the meditating on our feelings, and just in that meditation, it was being aware. You could actually, in a moment of having a strong feeling, you could move into those thoughts even as a contemplation to sort of help you. If something's arising for you, you're in a challenging situation, or you're feeling teary and sad, well, now I'm teary and sad. What's arising for me? How does that feel? And as I was working, you know, and thinking about this and practicing the meditations myself, I thought about a friend of mine who a number of years ago now committed suicide, very deliberately, very thoughtfully, very knowingly of what he was doing and why. And I thought to myself, that feeling that he had where something wasn't going to end, that things weren't going to change, it was that feeling was going to last forever, caused him such despair that ending his own life was a better alternative than thinking it was going to end. And that might be simplistic at some level, but I think that when we get stuck emotionally with our feelings, we can go to that extreme end. That's an extreme end to take our own life because we think that this feeling will never change, this situation will never change, this sadness will never change, the pain in my body will never change. But that particular meditation, when you have such strong feelings, either of intense sadness, it can lead to making decisions like that feel reasonable in that moment. Well, this is the only way I know to end it.
But what if they were positive?
Absolutely. If they're positive, then it's great. You take that and, you know, the conversation we had earlier about whatever path you're on to make yourself happy and a happier person, then great. You take that and you magnify it and you share it. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that in that thinking of this is also not going to, nothing will stays this way forever and is fixed in a permanent thing, it too will change, is to recognize that we have really happy moments in life. We have these great moments, and that when we do this and we try to hold on to them, or we try to grab onto them and keep them close to us, like people we love.
Hurts us later.
Pardon me?
Hurts us later.
Yeah.
And we think it's gonna last forever.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So even within that happiness, we take that, we share it, we express it, we're joyful and appreciative. But by doing this and thinking, oh, this is mine in this moment, this feeling's going to last forever. This great relationship with this person that makes me feel so good to be with. At some point in time, when that feeling might abate or change or hit a challenging moment, what happens to those relationships if you don't accept the fact that it's going to change is that it falls apart, you walk away. As opposed to saying, oh, no, that feeling was never meant to last. I can accept that now we're in this feeling, and that too will change. And then we can find that happy place again. And we can work through that. And in that way, that's how this flavor of emptiness helps you. Because exactly as you said, it hurts us later if we grab onto it and think that it doesn't change. But in the way of allowing it and recognizing it to say, it changes. And it's okay that it changes. When we move into that type of thinking, we're not so anxious. We don't hold on. We don't grab to us. And then it allows for other moments, other types of feelings that appear to be okay. And know that it's not the end of something. It's just a moment, a change. Does that make sense? So really, the rocks, the pen, your favorite object.
With the object thing, I found I noticed that I wasn't attached to any material objects. I was attached to an outcome of what I would be doing with the object. So if that was replaceable with something else, I tend not, I guess I just don't put sentimental value on any objects. I tried my guitar, and that was broken one day, so then I just played my dad's guitar. So that was no big deal. It's it didn't hurt me at all that my guitar was gone because I had my guitar there to use. Or that's just what I found. I just kind of noticed that I was not attached to the objects, but I was attached to the actions that we were doing.
Right, like your ability to play music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the music in itself.
It's an attachment.
Yeah. Which is a lovely attachment.
Is that an object, music itself?
I think that anything in some ways, I think in this meditation the idea was meant that it would be very concrete to help you move through that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't need to sit in that concrete place, music in itself, because you've labeled it as a word, we've made it a concrete thing in a way just by labeling it in some way. It's not a feeling. Ultimately, in this flavor of understanding that things are not permanent and not fixed, that they are changing moment to moment, is that what we really want to get in touch with is what you're suggesting is that feeling you had. Are you mildly irritated that the guitar is broken and you have to go fix it and it's time? Or are you, I really wanted to play right now, so I'm kind of disappointed that it's, but look over here. Next moment, my feeling changed and there's another guitar. I can play that one. And so then the feeling shifts, right? So all I would really like to impart with you is that in those, whatever moment it is, whether it's a happy moment, a sad moment, accepting that it will change and shift, really the greater place to be having your mind on is not on the object so much as it is on that feeling, and recognizing that these things will shift and change, and that helps us in our everyday life. That helps us. It helps us be better people, because when you've got someone who is mad at you, yelling at you, frustrated with you, can't imagine it happening, but if it did, and you're on the receiving end of their emotional experience, you can say to yourself, I have a little wisdom now. This moment will change. And you stand there and you nod. And you listen. And then you respond with some sense of understanding that that moment will change. Because as you're taking in someone else's anger, and I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I can feel in my body, I can feel that energy. I can feel my reaction arising in me, and then I have to talk it will change. This will change. It's not really pleasant right now to be yelled at, but this will change. Okay, it's over. It's already changed. They've stopped. Okay. Now I can collect myself and I can respond in a way where maybe I can enter into my response with a little bit of wisdom so that I don't create the next negative moment with that person, but I actually change it completely. So the idea of this flavor of emptiness is that we take it in our everyday life when we use it. And I love this ice cream. Pistachio ice cream is the best. And it's really great that I had it, and it's okay that it's over too. You know, is not negating anything. Not to say that we should be happy. We will feel sadness at times. It's not to be neutral about things. It's to not get stuck in thinking that those things will last and be in a fixed way forever and getting upset about them when they aren't. That's all. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first flavor. It's now 9:20. I can quickly introduce you to the second flavor, or we can...
8:20 or 9:20?
Oh, sorry, 8:20. It's my clock dyslexia, you know. Moving time.
That's the fastest 2 hours She's really good.
Sorry. So we can move on. We can try take our hand at the second one, because the second one and the first one are fairly intimately connected. Or we can pause now. Well, and just talk about questions or anything like that. What would people like to do?
I want to go to the bathroom. Before I start meditation.
Okay.
A friend of mine, that Marnie, we created ice cream flavors for all of the 6 flavors.
Really?
Oh.
So that we can remember. I'll just tell you the first one.
Yeah.
I told Sean already. The first one we said is Oreo, because you start eating Oreos or Oreo ice cream and it's good, but then eventually it stops being good. That's it.
I don't know if I've ever experienced that with Oreo
Ice cream.
It's always good.
You have to keep eating. At some point
Find
it's gonna
enough of
stop
it,
being
yeah.
good.
See, I don't even like Oreo ice cream.
I
I don't even like Oreos.
ice cream. I have to go to Ben and Jerry's.
I like vanilla or chocolate.
Oh man.
Very plain.
Dark chocolate
A lot
with
of
caramel and
ice cream. Pistachio is good.
I like this.
Hazelnut. is
Hazelnut.
Really good. Hazelnut
Maple.
chocolate. Maple, anything is really good. But if I never had them again, that would be okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, think about why wars start. Why do wars start? Because people think that what they think is the right way and not the wrong way, or that someone did something wrong and they need to be
want
righted.
Other people to think that way too.
Yeah. And so if they understood flavor 1 really and truly, that idea is not a fixed, permanent idea and it too will change, would you go to war and take people's lives over that need to change something in that way, when it's already a changing thing anyhow? I think that when we take that idea, that flavor, and I think in our consumer society, you know, I'm pretty clear that this rock might not last forever. However, I look across at the North Shore Mountains and I'm pretty sure that they're going to be around for a little while. I look at them with that sense of feeling. No, they're pretty big. They're pretty big rocks. They're going to be there for a lot longer than this rock. You know, I get that sense of permanence, and I think that
noticing that sense is like a huge thing, though. Noticing that sense exists
yes.
within you. It's like it's hard for me to like pinpoint that sense, or like where it is, or like whether I do have that sense or not at any given time.
Well, I think that for me it's not an actual experience so much as it is when I think about the opposite. Oh, those mountains aren't going to be there for a while? Oh, no. I think I really did. If I put it into if I try to negate what I assumed, did I not think they were going to be there? No, I pretty much thought they were going to be there. That's how I sort of find that sense.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
By asking myself, well, did I think it wasn't going to be there? No, I really did. Okay, so you really did. I think that when I walk outside, there's this little blue car over there somewhere that I'm going to get into, and it's going to go. I have every expectation that it will go. Now, will I get mad and stomp my feet when it doesn't go? No. Because I understand in this consumer-oriented world that things break down. I've had that experience. I understand that, and I understand that I have the means to fix it. I have this little plastic card that I can wave around, and all of a sudden things are fixed because I do that, which, is this miraculous thing. Other people in other countries of the world, I wonder if they would have that same assumption about their stuff that perhaps we in a very wealthy, privileged society have. They might approach their things differently. But people have different kinds of emotional attachments. In my family, I had to empty out my mother's house and divvy things up, and that's something that happens once in a lifetime that you do. And all of us had different relationships to the stuff of our childhood and of our lives and that belonged to my mom. And all of us had different ways of holding on to it. And it was interesting to me to sit back and observe that. It was interesting to me to see how I didn't really hold on, and it was interesting to me to observe where I got triggered and what I wanted to hold on to and why. Where I had distance and where I didn't. What I put value into, and it was interesting to me to watch that in myself, knowing, these ideas, and still seeing at times where I was like, not a lot, a little bit, but just a little bit. In some, what was a more challenging situation in life at that time, because it's filled with emotion of endings and letting go and all kinds of other things. It's not the stuff. But myself and my siblings, we all had very different ways of entering into that and what it meant. It's about memories. It's about having a trigger to help you move into something and remember. It's about having something to pass on. What we imbue those things with, and for me, my mother doesn't exist in any of those things. But it doesn't mean that those memories aren't supported by those things. But the minute that her things entered my home, they became something completely different. They changed automatically and transformed. They were no longer hers, they became mine. They moved into my things and my space, and all of a sudden they looked different, and there was a different context, and it shifted and it changed just by virtue of that. And so it's interesting to observe where we have an emotional relationship to things, what will trigger us and what won't, and when and why. Because it's not really about, as you're very clear about, it's not about the stuff, but it is about what we're putting onto it. Maybe it's the experience that we're going through with the stuff. When you leave your home and you move, and you get on an airplane and you come here, and you're starting over again.
It's been a really interesting, because over the last 3 years I've gone from so many things to very little, and coming here, I just giving stuff away, I didn't really care. But that printer, I have no idea why I'm so attached to it. I had to bring this printer, and I was giving away TVs, I just didn't care. Why?
Why?
Maybe it was the one final last thing that, your ability to sort of move into that state of giving.
Yeah.
You'd hit your wall. But, lots of change, right?
Yeah.
In this moment for you, lots and lots of change.
Yeah. So Maybe I just want that I can push that button and it does what I expect it to. Because nothing else does.
Yeah. So partly it's about what is happening. It's about context. It's about the story. And that story will also change. But in that moment, it's not that feeling is a fixed feeling either. It's just about recognizing it. Like, oh, okay. One of my teachers, his way of entering into this conversation is that when you get that feeling and you recognize it, you say to yourself, oh, so that's the way it is right now. Oh, okay, so that's the way it is. I'm feeling a little attached. I'm feeling a little challenged. I'm whatever that is. I'm feeling really happy. Oh, so that's the way it is right now. And I think with the power of this flavor, if we really implemented and used it in our lives, is that we would be much more willing to be like this and not like that. You know, and it doesn't mean that you have to give everything away or not hold on to whatever it is that you want to hold on to, you know, but understanding what it is that you're doing and why. You know, I keep, you know, there was one person I almost gave my doll away to. Almost. I was like that close to Bella. I almost gave my doll to Bella. But instead what I decided was that she shouldn't have my doll imbued with all of my stuff and no hair. And so I made her own doll.
Who's Bella?
Aura's daughter.
Oh.
Remember
Oh,
little
right.
Isabella?
Lucky.
Oh, I fell in love with her. But, you know, she needed to have her own doll, not my ratty doll with ITT on it. You know? Yeah. So, I think it's the observation of that. And Thich Nhat Hanh, he says some interesting things about if we could just learn how to really, really, really walk with that idea that everything in our life is changing from moment to moment, how much better we would be able to cope with things as they changed. How much more acceptance would we have of, so that's the way it is right now. How would we be able to move through that with a greater degree of happiness because we're not grasping onto things, including those happy things that we want to hold really tightly. You know, think about a relationship you've had with someone and what worked about it, what didn't work. When did you have to let go inside of that relationship? And what were you holding on to, and when were you able to let go of it? Because that's what this flavor is about. And it's finding that it's not about that other person or about the rock or my doll or anything else, really. It's about the feeling inside of us and recognizing it. Not to negate anything, it's okay to have stuff, but about how you feel in acknowledging that it will break, it will wear out, it will pass, it will change, and moving into acceptance of that. I'm going to talk about flavor 2, and then you can go home and try a few things, and then I'll let you go. So, flavor 2 builds on flavor 1, and flavor 2 is the idea that you can control things, you can control the outcome. It's my rock. I'm going to put it in my bag and take it home. I'm going to put it in a little glass bowl with a candle on it. It's going to be in my bathroom. I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with this rock. You know, it's my pen to use. I bought it, I paid for it, I own it. You can't take my pen, at least not without asking me, because I control it. That's flavor 2. I control its fate. I own it. So,
But what if he does take your pen?
if he takes my pen,
Do you have any control over that?
You have control over your reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have control over your reaction?
Maybe not initially. You have control over your reaction to your reaction.
You're onto something, and if I had a whiteboard here right now, I would draw you a picture. So I'll draw in the air, and you can fill in the whiteboard with your imagination. So going back to at the beginning when I defined some things for you, and I defined that idea of karma. So you have an action here, there, that's A. You do A, and you get, that's your action, you get a reaction up here, B. So down here in A, at some unknown point in time, I took something that belonged to someone. And not a straight across immediate reaction, but sometime over here there's a B. Someone will come along and take my pen without my permission. Now, that if I give him my pen, here you go, have a pen.
Nice one.
I've given away a pen. I've done an A, I've done an action. And down the road somewhere along the way, when I need a pen, one's going to appear at some indeterminate time. So in Buddhism, they say that the A, that action, you aren't in control of that moment. But remember the comment I made about gardening? You want to think about what you're going to do, what you're going to say, and what you're going to feel, so that in the moment that, the next moment, when you've thought about your feeling, you've observed yourself, you okay, someone took my pen, okay, it's okay. I wasn't really that attached to it. I was kind of neutral about that pen. It's okay. No, have it. It's all right. Not a problem. I had my experience of my feeling. I recognized that the pen wasn't always going to last forever anyway. I may as well give it away because I'm going to get another moment over here. I have more scarves than you can shake a stick at. I've got a big basket of scarves and I keep getting them away. What do I keep getting more of? Scarves! Whether that idea resonates for you or not of karma, but to answer your question, in Buddhism, that's how they would answer that. Your karma affects, in this moment, your reaction to the fact that my reaction to the fact that I don't control this pen, it's not working. That reaction, I didn't really control that. Then that's because something from I planted before caused for it to run out. Me getting another pen, the very next moment, is from something else I planted in an unknown previous moment to arise in this moment. But can I control this moment? Not immediately. When you get really good at watching yourself, you can then shorten that gap, that time between your action and your reaction, so that you maybe have an easier time inside of your reaction. But can I control whether or not someone just took my pen and walked away? No. Does that make sense? I'm a school teacher. I take a lot of people's pencils and pens, and the kids are like, hey, I don't have a pencil anymore. I went, you had a pencil this morning, but I was probably sharing the pencil with them. And then I walk over there and I put it in someone else's tool bin, and then maybe I put it over there in the room, and it's a very fluid exchange for me, that kind of ownership of things. And, other teachers are also very fluid with their tools, and they're walking in and out of my room, and pens are coming and going. And at one point, many, many years ago, I bought that pen. And I went out and I bought a whole lot of them because I knew that they would look a little bit different, you know. They weren't quite as cheap as everybody else's pens. And I liked this thing down here, and, you know, it had the little clicky thing, and so I could turn it off, and I could had a thing, and I could stick it on there, and I wouldn't get ink on me. And, you know, I put a little bit of thought into that decision. And so I went out and I bought these pens, and it turned out that the other teacher that I worked very, very intimately and closely with went out and bought the same pens, the same idea, that maybe she could then identify her pens. And so we just sort of laughed and said, well, I guess we're not going to worry about owning the pens anymore. So, flavor 2, if we're thinking about it on a feeling basis and not, you know, my pen, somehow I came with 3, I have 4. See, there I am, taking more pens. On a feeling basis, it's, I don't control this feeling in this moment, but I can work on my reaction for the next moment. So when you go home and you want to have something to meditate on, what you can do is you can flavor 1. Nothing is a fixed, permanent thing. Everything is, the antidote to that thought is that everything is changing from moment to moment. So mode 1, you look at it. Mode 2, you get in touch with your feeling about it. How do I feel about it? Good, bad, neutral, happy, sad, mad, glad, to borrow from my kindergarten class. That's their range of words. Mad, sad, glad, bad. And then, how do I feel about it in that moment? If I see it as a changing, impermanent, unfixed thing, does that actually relieve me? Does it make me want to hold on more? And can I control its outcome? Can I control that feeling? When that feeling of anger arises in you, can you control it in that sensation rising through your body? If you've ever had anger, like, can you actually control that feeling and stop it?
The woman who had the stroke, that wrote The Stroke of Insight, and one of her TED Talks on, I don't know if there's a TED Talk or on YouTube, but that anger you feel chemically, she said, it lasts 90 seconds. You can't control it, but what you control is what you do after the 90 seconds.
Right. So in those 90 seconds, when that flush of love, of lust, of anger, of impatience, of frustration, of mild irritation, of whatever that feeling is, you pause and you think, well, it was never, this isn't going to last, it'll change. In this moment, I can't control it, but in the next moment, I possibly can. And in accepting that you don't control it in that moment, you don't worry about doing that or this. You're more able to do that. And if you're more able to do that, what are you more able to do for yourself and others? What are you more able to be?
Plant better seeds.
Plant better seeds. Be happier. Be calmer. Be more patient. Be kinder. Be gentler with yourself and others. They're not these big, complex, earth-shattering ideas, but I think that if we really, 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 truly practice them well, and really practice them in all scenarios, we wouldn't have that many mental afflictions. We would actually be a lot calmer and happier and more peaceful.
One thing I tend to do is like push feelings away. Just pretend to not feel them. That's something that's like habitually programmed into me.
Yeah, because in order to not give rise to those feelings, we put them down, we suppress them. And I'm not talking about doing that, because that's, you know, for your body and for your own emotional life.
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
gotta be
hard.
like careful with not doing that, because yeah, like when you say like this is not gonna last forever, like it doesn't really help with that. Stop preventing that. Do you have anything like connecting with that?
does saying it's not going to last forever, does it help you with the suppression of them?
Or just like believing that it's not going to last forever doesn't help with suppression.
That's an interesting one, and I'll have to pause on that and think about it for a minute. But I guess I would suggest to you is looking at the feeling of suppression and what is that. The suppression isn't the feeling. What is that feeling
It's just
of why you
it's like
suppress?
not feeling. It's like that feeling's there, but I choose to not take note, not acknowledge, closing a blind eye to it. Right, so
And so I would pose some questions to you for lack of not wanting to be, I'm not a therapist, but for me, what I connect to and having some empathy with that is fear, loss of control. Those are my reasons for why I do that at times. When you get that lump in your throat and you swallow it, sort of experience it over sadness because you don't want to lose control, you don't want to let go, you don't want to letting someone else in or being vulnerable. And I guess that would be, if I were you, for me, that would be a really good place to sit in meditation and look at. Well, when I go back and look at memories, look at experiences, in those moments when you did suppress, what do you think that feeling was really about? Why were you motivated to suppress? Would that, sitting there, would that be helpful to you? Would that be beneficial to you? Would that be of use to you to sit there and explore those feelings in a way that you can contain yourself and be safe? You need to be safe and not feel like you're just letting go so completely that it's not a healthy thing for you. Exploring these thoughts should be in the realm of your health, right?
yeah, I do. I meditate every day and stuff, so like a lot more comes out, like just in daily life, like maybe not even be anything that's happening in this moment, but feelings come up tied to a memory. It's like almost like I just didn't feel it because like this happens unconsciously, like about to start to feel it, but before I even like understand what memory is triggering this certain feeling, I already push it away because I don't want to feel it. So I'm just kind of like trying to work on
Oh, good for
not
you.
doing that, but it's not always like, a lot of times I still put it down before I even
You're
realize.
habituated.
Yeah.
The thing for me that's helped with mine and everybody's is like you said, the answer for me, for what worked for me was sitting with it. And if that emotion was coming up, instead of habitually going, oh my God, you're so emotional, you're always expressing yourself, why don't you stop it, why are you getting upset about this, it's so stupid, is like, oh my God, I'm having all these thoughts. That's really sad that that's how I feel. Like this is how I work through. It's really sad, that's how I feel. And then I sort of put myself as the observer, just watching myself separately in a way. And I could get into it and then it would just dissipate. It was really quite remarkable because I struggled with that for 58 years. So.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And when you talk about yourself as the observer, in Mahamudra and trying to get in touch with those feelings, that really is what you're being, is the observer of you. And that's a really great question. It's a brave question because no one walks through this life without having found some positive tools for moving through the world and some tools that perhaps when we learned certain things like to suppress, perhaps it was a useful tool at that time, and at this point in time in our life, is it a useful tool anymore? And I've had to look at those things, at my patterns of ways that I deal with things, and I deal with them by similarly to you, but I know how I'm feeling, and I say, well, you can't feel that. You can't let that go. You can't put that out there. I know I'm feeling it, and I'm breathing in. I'm excusing myself. I need to go to the washroom now, and I go and I take a break and I calm myself down. I need to find words sometimes so that I can express myself in a way. And I think that part of it for me has been trust, and trusting myself, trusting the other person that I'll be received and heard, and being able to, and so I need to do that in a way of having some sense of control. So the way I get control is by not negating the emotion and pushing it away. I take a pause. Okay. So that's the way it is now. I don't know, for me that phrase is very simple, and it's just so forthright and but helpful. I can move into that. So that's the way it is now. I'm really sad, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm scared, or I'm frustrated with you, or whatever that is. Whatever that is.
It's true, it's related to control, isn't it? Because I have this thing, or I would do that too, and I started to notice that whenever I don't want to feel something, I like go on a cleaning rampage, right? Because I'm trying to control, I'm trying to like find some kind of control, and I think I can do it by cleaning. There's something else I do
I
too.
used to clean. I don't clean anymore.
But like a rampage.
But it's about if my exterior
Yeah, like trying to
world
make
is
it work.
clean and controlled,
Yeah.
then my interior world, at least I can control that. If I can't control what's inside emotionally, for me, cleaning was very much about then I can control the outside world.
So now I try and notice that, because then I'm like, oh, there must be something that I just don't want to, I'm not acknowledging that I want to, I'm trying to run away from something that I think I have no control over, that I don't understand, I don't want to accept. So now every time I go on a cleaning rampage, I just go lie down instead.
Because now cleaning rampage, you just like notice that you.
Well, there's a
notice
certain
within
feeling to
yourself.
the rampage, right? Like, I'm like mad. I'm mad, and I want it to be clean, and it's not clean, and it's not working, right? There's something else going on. That's my personal trigger. But now I do something different. I noticed it.
I gotta start noticing some stuff that
Yeah,
I
notice
do.
what you do when you're trying to like control that feeling.
Yeah.
I also started labeling the emotion now, like depending on like, and I'll just like think of it and put that label to the emotion instead of like just like feeling that emotion, because it's usually just like a quick fleeting emotion, right? But if I label it, then it like I acknowledge that it was there instead of like my unconscious mind dealing with it in a negative way. Like, it just helps.
In yoga, they talk about our body systems as being winds and channels, and that when we have a surge of emotions, it is like it's energy, it's winds. If it's sadness, there's a physical body sensation in your body of, maybe it's heaviness or any of those things. And for me, it's been helpful to associate the physical expression of my body, even in those subtle ways, and to label them, because then I can then begin to recognize in my body what's happening, and I can then begin to label it so I can move into it, and I can acknowledge it, and in acknowledging it I can then let it go. But I can't even get into the letting go until I can take that for me it's a physical sensation first, which I can then begin to label, and it's noticing what is that sensation. I go to this chiropractor, and she's very trained in Ayurvedic medicine as well, and she pulls on me right there, and it hurts like mad. And I said to her yesterday, what is that? She said, well, it's your pec muscles, and it's because you do this, and you're holding yourself that way. I went, no, what is that? She goes, you're not balanced in your masculine, your feminine, you're in conflict with yourself. I went, okay, that's what that is. And that but it's about the inside of where we hold on to our attention, where we hold stress, what we do, how we move into that, what is that body sensation. At this point in my life, I'm being told by 2 physiotherapists, I don't know how to breathe. And I don't breathe properly, and I hold everything here. And so, in holding everything there, that's where all my tension and tightness goes. It goes here, it goes into my upper back. So then I don't sleep. And the ripple effects of holding things here and not breathing, and why? Because because I'm not letting it go, and I'm holding on to that that sensation of my body, or I'm pushing it down and not giving it a voice. So I think all of us have our own, it's about finding that way in with that recognition. Whether it's a physical way in for you, or a recognizing a behavior way in, or a conversation with yourself way in, but there's a way in of saying, this won't last. So I can acknowledge it, and trying to create that space for yourself. So try Flavor 1 this week. And what I'm interested in is that when you try this, and whether it lasts for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and coming back next week and sharing. What did what experiences did you have? What did you observe? How did it feel? Were you able to move it? Were you able to let go? Were you able to sort of acknowledge it and say, well, this isn't going to last, and did that change? Was it okay to acknowledge something because you knew it wasn't going to last in a certain way? That's what I'm interested in. So during the week, if you plan on coming back next week, and it would be lovely if you did, at the end of every meditation, just take little notes. This is what I observed, this is what my experience was. Any questions that you might have that might come up, just write them down. And then we'll talk next week. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Thanks, Karen.
So at the end of, we did not start this as a formal meditation, partly because I forgot, and partly because I would like this to be less formal. But in formal meditations, we would do a whole way of greeting each other. But at the end, what I would like to do is just very quickly get into a nice sitting posture, and put your hands together. And just, in your own mind, share the goodness of coming tonight, of how you've shared yourself with others, and wish happiness to you and everyone else in the world. Send it out like bright yellow light from your heart out into the world, and imagine it landing on someone, seeing them being happy to receive that gift. And thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Please keep teaching us.
Thank you.
I've been on a teaching sabbatical.